game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
Welcome, young adventurers. Dylan here. On today's podcast, I have Sam Shames. He's the co-founder and chief operating officer of Ember Labs, the first thermal wellness company and maker of the Wave Bracelet. I'm excited to talk to him about biofeedback and all of that. So without any further ado, I'd like to bring on Sam Shames.
Thanks, Dylan. Happy to be here.
Brother.
Thanks for having me.
We've been having a little bit of a
Doing
technical
well.
difficulty where the audio switched over again. This happened on the last podcast as well. If you just want to reach down and switch over that audio thing again, I'll give you the thumbs up when we have good audio.
Sure. Let's see. Is
The
that
joy
better
and
now?
beauties of being online and live today is the fact that it doesn't always work. And so sometimes we got to work on the fly and we got to work and figure out what we need to do. So as we get him to change over the audio, that is what we've got going on. We are part of this challenging times with doing this thing, but we'll get through it.
Is this better? Working?
Okay,
Test,
well, let's see what's going on here. Well,
Test,
we're going to keep giving him a chance to figure this out. Otherwise, we will cut the stream and we will come back to this and we'll try this one more time to figure out what's going on.
Just try
All right.
different headphones.
3, 2, 1. I think we're going to be switching out to audio headphones. We're going in with the big ones.
Any better?
He's going to be plugging in the what I call the airplane. It looks like I'm going to go drive an airplane right now with a hat on and my big old earmuffs in. And so I think he's going to be doing the same thing. And so we're going to be figuring this out together on the fly. And he's in. Welcome, Sam. Glad.
You can hear this?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Yes. There's a weird bug that I've noticed yesterday that
for me. Hold on a second. Now I can't hear you guys. So strange.
Is it?
This is terrible.
Interesting.
Test. You can hear me, right? You're not, but I cannot hear you. That's so strange.
This is very interesting.
It was literally working a second ago. Remember this?
Yeah. We usually do a green room thing before this, and it was working out great. Yeah. Can you hear me?
What a struggle.
I know.
What a struggle.
Okay. Okay. So then what we can try and do is this.
We're just there.
Yeah. So what we'll do is
Test.
testing.
Test.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So now we're
We
back.
got it. We made it. All right.
What a struggle.
The secret ingredient is toggling my camera on and off, and that somehow fixes the audio. So this is real time live, everybody. So we're getting through this. All right, Sam, it is great to actually connect and hear your voice, man. Thanks for popping on.
My pleasure. Thanks for bearing with me, and again, really happy to be here.
You know, technology, it's one of those things that we live with it and we love it, but sometimes it does whatever it wants to do and it becomes the greatest enemy. So it's, as you know, technology it's a fickle mistress. So
it's, who even knows how it works too? There's so much going on between how do you actually get sound in my voice here in Boston to appear to people all over the world.
Yeah. Is that where you're at right now? Are you in Boston?
I am.
Oh man. I haven't been in Boston since I was doing a virtual reality hackathon for MIT, and I was a Californian born and bred, and I spent the first time ever in Boston in January, and I learned that jeans don't cut it. That's
No, yeah, Californians when they come to Boston, if it's in the winter, they're like, "Well, get me out of here."
Yeah. Run away. Yeah, it was a whole experience, but cool people, wickedly smart, cold, they're intellectual, funny, they know how to party. So I give it up to you guys. An awesome breed. Were you born in Boston, or is that?
I was, yeah. So I grew up in the suburbs outside of Boston, and then went to MIT for my undergrad and stayed. So didn't go very far, but did manage to at least live in Spain for one summer. But otherwise,
wow.
Very much a Massachusetts native.
That is so cool. So when you, we'll touch on Spain a little bit later, but when you went to MIT, is that how you discovered the thermal wellness and all that? What was your journey from MIT to actually founding Ember Labs?
Yeah, so I came to MIT like many folks, having no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Um, I decided to study material science and engineering as my major because I thought, everything is made of stuff. So that feels like a good foundation. I could go in many places. And while I was there, I really became very interested in, sustainability and clean technology. So things like batteries, solar panels. There's a lot of material science there. So got involved in some research there as an undergrad, and actually while working for a professor in his lab, I met the folks who'd become my co-founders, Matt and David. They were grad students pursuing PhDs, and I met them and I said, wow, they're the type of people who you meet and you're like, this person's really smart, but they're also just really kind and good-hearted. It's the type of person you meet and you're like, wow, I would want to spend more time with them.
Yeah.
So that was kind of got to know them a little bit. And then the summer going into my senior year, I pitched them on doing this prototyping contest together. Every summer, the material science department does a contest to kind of get people, hacking away and really trying to make something. And there's a $10,000 grand prize. So we said, hey, if we win $10,000, that would be amazing. Yeah. So we decided to do it. We didn't have an idea. We didn't have a grand plan. We just said, this is going to be a fun way to spend some time this summer. We came up with the idea from being too cold in an over air conditioned lab and having to repeatedly put on sweatshirts to stay comfortable. And we said, there's got to be a better way. Why can't I heat and cool myself directly? So that was kind of the aha moment was, what if we could make a wearable that could heat and cool? We built our first prototypes and we were just amazed at how actually well it worked. We didn't expect that would be a particularly effective thing or that it would work well, but it really made us feel good. And we ended up winning the contest, and the idea went completely viral. We got emails from people all over the world who said, temperature is the biggest pain point in my life, and when can I buy this? And as we read those emails, we just said, wow, we have to see if we can sell something. And I was applying to grad school at the time. It was the fall of my senior year. I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to, work for a big company, or that wasn't interesting. And so I think in the back of my mind, the idea of entrepreneurship had always sort of been there. My grandma started her own business actually in the 60s. And so when this kind of opportunity came, I said, hey, absolutely, count me in. And we incorporated the business in 2014. And here we are 7+ years later.
That's a lifetime in technology.
It's been a while, yeah.
Quite an evolution. Can you walk me through just a little bit of how the Wave bracelet works, and how does someone use it, like a use case? Give me a little mental model walkthrough of it.
Sure. So let's start with, when the first problem we had was I'm too hot or too cold in an office or in a lab space. What the Wave does is you put it on your wrist, and with the push of a button, you can start cooling this spot. So it's literally going to use thermal energy. It's going to get cold on this spot. And it turns out that application of temperature in just a local space can impact how you feel overall. So that's comfort. What we're really doing at a technology level is we're delivering temperature to the skin as a therapy to help balance the nervous system. So, when you're too hot or too cold, your thermoregulatory system is a little bit out of balance. It's not necessarily that your core body temperature has changed, but an element of your nervous system is not in balance with the rest. And it turns out there's a number of other use cases where kind of the same thing is occurring. So the biggest one, and where we've gotten the most traction, is people experiencing hot flashes. So as a side effect of menopause, but also as a side effect of cancer and other medical conditions. Even people who have trouble falling asleep, that oftentimes is related to an overactive sympathetic nervous system. People who are experiencing stress and anxiety. So there turn out to be a whole bunch of use cases where the problem at its core is the overactive nervous system, and temperature, applying hot and cold to the skin, can be a solution.
And so that's what you have on your wrist there. Is that you held it up for a second as little? I got a bunch of beads. You got okay.
This is an Ember Wave, yeah.
Yeah, Ember Wave, beautiful. And so primarily it does local cooling, right? And it allows you to kind of readjust your autonomic nervous system. Is that what we got going on there?
Yeah. So it warms as well. So it applies all types of thermal energy, so hot and cold. It's personalizable, so you can control, like you would a shower, how warm or cold you want it. And in applying that sensation, it's basically helping your body to balance the nervous system by using temperature as a signal to the brain.
Oh man, so I'm smiling because I was in bed with my fiance last night, and she was just complaining because I had the fan on, and she's like, but it's too cold. But you want the fan on, and I put out my hand gets hot, and I gotta put it back in, and I'm like this. And I was just like, I don't know.
We're very familiar with those thermostat wars. Yeah, we've one of the things we learned early on is temperature is personal, because people think of it as a temperature is 98.6, and they're not wrong. Temperature is what a thermometer measures. It's a subjective number, but temperature is also a subjective experience. Because a 70-degree room could feel completely comfortable for you, or way too hot or way too cold for your fiance. And so it's really important to, realize that until everyone has the ability to control their thermal experience, there's always going to be those, thermostat wars like you're experiencing.
Yeah, it's the haptic equivalent of putting in your headphones. So. Yep. Yeah, so you go through it, and it's like you do you, I do me. You put on each other headphones. There'll be no thermal wars, as you call it. What have you seen in terms of like clinical data or any type of supporting things around the effectiveness for? Well, let's first dive into sleep. Have you done like case studies on that? Have you seen how does it help? Is there any numbers and metrics you can add quantitatively to the qualitative reports?
Yeah, that's a great question. So. My co-founders and I, being a team of MIT scientists, that quantitative data was really important. We were very fortunate to feel like we had options, and we said, hey, if we're going to really pursue this, we want to make sure there's some rigorous science here, and this isn't just a placebo effect. So the first thing we did, when we started the company, was we dove into the scientific literature, and we found all this data supporting the general thesis of temperature applied to the skin can help. Then as we launched this product, we were able to start doing trials with our own product. So, what we have as public today is work we did in 2019. That was in collaboration with Johnson & Johnson. We looked at the product's ability to help with sleep in menopausal women experiencing night sweats. And we found statistically significant results, including a 168% improvement in hot flash control, 28%, I think, reduction in sleep or the insomnia severity index. And that was published in Behavioral Sleep Medicine. We've also presented work at the annual meeting of the North American Menopause Society. And then to complement the clinical trials, we have just an incredible body of real world evidence. So we have with Ember Wave a mobile app where you can customize the heating and cooling. And we've created preset modes. So we have a fall asleep mode, and we have a all night mode. And so we can see on our back end, and we have the customer testimonials that tell us, wow, like this is really, people are using these modes, and you can read on our website, it makes a huge difference. So it's a really nice combination of, just the customer testimonials and the qualitative feedback. And as you say, the clinical data, which we've gathered, we have a couple publications, but we're continuing to invest in that as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I figured being from MIT, you'd have some sort of science data to support it. I was curious about also. I mean, one of my favorite health tools that I have is the Apple Watch, because it also speaks to a lot of other devices and things. Do you have that in? Is there an integration in that? Is there a way to like pull data fast? I know. There's applications like the Pillow app and other things that track your sleeping patterns through the Apple Watch. Do you have anything that you have on the roadmaps with integrating into the Apple Watch and any of that, the whole Apple ecosystem?
So we are definitely looking into that. I can't comment on what's on our roadmap, except to say that
I want a Gantt chart. Tell me what's going on. No, it's okay.
looking into ways to continue to integrate with the other wellness tools that our customers are using, and also kind of figure out how we can use that data to make our products better, while of course respecting the individual's privacy is definitely something we're hearing. Because ultimately, we think of ourselves as a thermal wellness technology company, but really we think of our positioning as high tech and high touch. And so we take a lot of care in listening to our customers. And, one of the things we've heard repeatedly is, hey, how can you help me use both the data that, I'm generating from when I use the app to better understand my health, and then also help, can you connect the dots between, how many steps I'm taking or things like that.
And that's what I'm really curious about, for good or for ill. I mean, Apple does a really good job at kind of like getting the data all shared around in the environment to really kind of give you stacking benefits. And so I would just imagine, because I know I use my Pillow app and other apps, and I use my Apple Watch here to be able to kind of see what's going on and see how do my sleep patterns, sort of things like that. And I would imagine if you had that type of data provided to the Wave, you would understand that you could auto adjust certain types of heat and what kind of, am I a hot body versus cold body? Do I want things? And that was it's more of a curiosity thing. But again, no need to push into areas that are proprietary and that stuff. It's more of a current problem I'm facing and a top of mind thing. I'm like, I wonder how that works. So that's great. What like, in terms of your journey in the last 7 years and to create this, I mean, I think some people would hear it and be like, oh, wow, they're just like an overnight success. They had an idea and then they built a thing and then they got all their money and then that's why I should do a startup. I should do a startup because that's all I need to do. I just go to a hackathon, I make something, I get a bunch of money, and then I'm in business. Can you please help clarify some of the struggles and what I would call threshold guardians that you've gone against as you've tried to create this company?
Yeah, it's it's been a long time. I mean, the company incorporation turned 7 on February 28th. That's over 2,500 days. It's a lot of days. And my joke is that, when we started, I couldn't grow a beard, but it's been the furthest thing from an overnight success. I think, what is, looking back, the kind of thresholds to get to where we were now is when we started, we were first-time entrepreneurs, right? So we were scientists and engineers who had never started a company, had no business experience. So there's risk on the team. We were doing a completely new technology, saying, okay, we don't even know if you can make this technology. The science also needed to be proven. And then on top of that, there was the market risk, right? So we said, okay, we have no idea if this team can execute. Even if they say they can execute, does this technology actually going to meet the requirements? Even if it does, is the rigorous science behind it that makes it effective? And then even if you get all that, will people buy it? So we had to kind of prove all of those in sort of the iterative fashion to really get to the point where, we could start to get the support we needed. We were, in hindsight, incredibly naive. We thought after we won the contest in 2013 that we would be 6 months away from launching a product when, what we won the contest with was basically an Arduino, with wires sticking everywhere. It wasn't even wearable. And then if you'd asked us 6 months later, we also thought, we still would have said it's 6 months to launch. We also thought at that time that, by 2014, we said, okay, we're ready to raise $1 million when, we didn't get even close to raising that amount of money until 2017. What we ended up having to do was basically, prove do the primary market research to figure out who our customer would be. Then we needed to prove that the product would work for that customer and that they would pay. That required, in turn, taking the Arduino version of the technology and actually making early, fully wearable prototypes so that these people could actually try it out in their daily life. And sort of in conjunction with all of that, it meant really investigating the science so we could tell a credible story. Mm-hmm. So that took 3+ years until we basically had enough data to start to convince some angel investors to fund the actual production design. So it was in 2016 that we made this version of the product. And even then, we had raised probably half the amount of money we wanted to, but it was as much as we could raise given how far along we were. And even then, you finish the design, then you have to launch it. You have to go to manufacturing. That took a whole nother year. And even after you launch, then what? We kind of thought, okay, we're going to launch this product and sales are just going to go through the roof. It turns out there's a whole bunch of work you need to do to actually build a marketing infrastructure, to build out customer support, to, continue to develop the product. So, it's taken us an incredibly long time because there's just a huge amount of work that goes into it. And it's one of those things that we never would have known. If you'd asked me in 2013, you're still going to be doing this in 2021, I would have thought you were crazy. But now, you look back at how much we've achieved and how much we've learned, and you said, okay, it makes sense that it took this long.
100%. I mean, your story rings true in so many cases that people don't realize. I mean, even if I only go to MIT and I win a prize and investors give me money and I win, it's like, no, that's not the game.
They'll take your calls, but they won't give you money.
Yeah, they'll string you out. We'll let you know. But what you're talking about stacking traction, right? Like you had some traction from the event, but you really needed to get in people's hands. In order to get in people's hands, you need to take an evolutionary step. But then other people get then to try out the technology, you then needed to prove that it was actually practical and usable, and then bringing in the whole production side of things, which is, I don't know if you're dealing with China or any of those other types of stuff, but that is, one mess up, one wrong diode or one die that's casted wrong or whatever that just ruins a whole batch, and so there's all of that learning curves. If you could go back in, I'm not like, there's nothing about regrets here, but what piece of knowledge do you think, if you could go back and tell your younger self after you're looking at the 7 years journey, what advice would you give that bright-eyed, beardless, younger version of yourself coming into this?
I think the biggest one is patience. When I was just starting, it was 21 or 22. I was like desperate for this to work overnight. I was like, already thinking about, what am I going to do after Ember? Or like, why hasn't this happened yet? Like now, 8 years in, I'm like, okay, this is going to work. I really think we're on the cusp of some really exciting stuff, but I know now that that's actually going to still take another 2 to 3 or 4 years. And I'm okay. 8 years in, I'm okay with another 4 years in a way. Like, back then I was like, this really needs to happen overnight. So that's probably the biggest thing, is just, focus on the process of the next milestone. And you don't need, we're not a software company with networking effects like Instagram that's going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars in 100 days after, we're doing hardware, we're doing deep science, we're doing cutting edge science. We're then applying it to develop brand new technology that's never existed. And then we're convincing people to pay for that hundreds of dollars of their hard-earned money. Like, all of those are hard and time consuming. And, if we do it right, we think there's a really high growth business that, really has a strong moats, but also has a really big impact on our customers. But that's going to take a while.
It all takes time. And being at the bleeding edge is you bleed. They said, like, the way pioneers is they have arrows in the back and they're laying on the floor. And so that's one of the challenges of it. But you also, again, you carve a path, and if anybody tried to jump into the space that you're doing, I'm sure there's patents or any of those other types of things, but there's also the how long it would take for them to get where you are. There's that tech, all of the everything that took you to build up to where you're at is, it's you're stacking value, and it just takes time and effort and energy. What with that being said, and looking through what you've done going through this journey, what do you think is the most exciting use case for you, knowing this technology, go say currently, like what currently is the thing that you think has you get you the most excited in terms of impact?
Yeah, I would say without hesitation that it is helping people who are experiencing hot flashes. So, women with menopause is a market that's going to grow to 1.1 billion people. And if you talk to them and you really understand the problem, you learn that they're having anywhere from 7 to 40 hot flashes a day, each lasting for a couple minutes, that these last up to a decade in time. They're incredibly disruptive for everything from sleep to wakefulness to, you're giving a presentation. Right now, the existing solutions are hormone replacement therapy, so going on yet another pill, or to do kind of natural supplements, which just don't necessarily work. And what we've heard from these customers is that Ember Wave is nothing short of life-changing. And so when you look at kind of the magnitude of the impact you can have, the feedback from the population and those customers, and the technology is just incredibly effective, because a hot flash, it's a temperature problem in that you feel too warm, and so cooling just feels good, because when you're hot, cold things feel good. But it's actually more than a temperature problem, because a hot flash is an overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system. So it's just like the perfect alignment, because we're delivering value in that we're solving the root cause of that overactive nervous system. We're helping to balance that and end the hot flash, but we're also relieving the symptoms, because your subjective experience is, ooh, this cold thing on my wrist feels really good.
So when you say overactive nervous system, and I mean, there could be multiple causes for an overactive nervous system. I mean, it could be psychological, it could be chemistry, there could be other elements going on to that. I mean, how do you measure an overactive nervous system?
Yeah, there's there's a number of ways to do it. Heart rate variability is sort of one of the most common today. But for most of our customers, they just measure it subjectively. You say, "Wow, I feel a hot flash coming on," or "I feel a panic attack," or "I feel an anxiety attack." And you're absolutely right to say that, like, in the case of a woman experiencing menopause, it is the imbalance of hormones that is causing these hot flashes. But it can also just be stress. Like if you think about the last time you were in a near accident in your car and you felt that like rush of energy and heat kind of up the back of your spine, that is another example of basically your nervous system going into fight or flight mode.
Got it. Yeah. Because I mean, I've had like sensations of being hot before, but it was more of like a psychological thing where I'm like, oh, I'm getting too hot, right? But it was just like stress and all that fun stuff. I didn't have one of those. But they say cool down. So I was just curious about ways to measure it. Is there any synergistic effects that you've seen using other types of immersive technologies or biofeedback devices that you've seen to have a symbiotic relationship with your device?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did some work a couple years ago that was published with Draper Labs out here in Boston, where we were showing that basically temperature plus sound or temperature plus sight ends up being basically a faster way to get someone's attention, especially if you're in a very kind of sensory intense environment. So if you're in a very crowded space, yelling to hear just, "Hey, Dylan," that's going to be hard to get your attention. But if you combine that with a thermal signal, then that's a great way. So, we've always thought about that like, there could certainly be applications, something like VR or AR, but we're really focused on this thermal wellness space right now, as we see that as where we can have the biggest market impact.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's an endless amount of roads you can go down. And it's so easy because I'm a developer. I build VR experiences and so forth and so on. So easy for someone to throw out a feature set like, "Hey, why don't you have an open API that allows me to plug into it?" And then then you have a whole litany of issues that come up. It's a couple of 6 words out of my mouth, and it's months of work for you. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we learned early on it's very easy to share ideas in a meeting, in a pitch, but also that those ideas are not necessarily valued. Like we used to talk about all the different things we could do with the technology, thinking that made especially early on when we were fundraising, thinking that made an investor more likely to cut a check, when we would have been better off just saying, we're going to do this one thing, and this one thing is enough to grow our revenue to 100 million. So I think it's something we've gotten better at, but as you say, there's always words and ideas are free, and then it's when you actually start to look at the personnel hours and the opportunity cost, that's when things get real.
It's a bandwidth problem, and you're right. Investors just want simple ideas that make lots of money. That's, if you over complex things, get them all scared and nervous. So at least from what I've seen, so with all this technology you're doing and everything else, is there opportunities for you to does AI play a factor at all? Because I know that whenever I think of these different types of buzzword acronyms, people always say, "Oh, biofeedback, AI, VR, blockchain, bitcoins." There's all those types of things. Is there a chance for does AR at all play a factor at this?
Yeah, there's huge opportunities there. I would say, broadly speaking, it's all about personalization. In terms of personalizing the actual temperature. We talk a lot about things like predictive operation, and how do we get to the point where the device is just turning on automatically because it knows when you're about to need it. And then, on the insight side, right? Like, how can you use AI to help you connect the dots to when you're using the product, and what you can learn from your usage data.
Yeah, that makes sense. Want to shift the conversation here. One thing that I saw is that you were actually a national champion wrestler. Is that correct?
Yeah, wrestling is a huge passion of mine.
Yeah. Is there one thing I'm interested to learn is, this is more of a mindset question. It takes a certain type of mindset, especially with wrestling, to become a national champion. What are some mindset things that you learned from being a wrestler that aided you in your journey of Ember Labs and doing all of that?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing I learned is the sort of what I call it, it's a bit of a paradox. Wrestling teaches you, or taught me, to appreciate adversity and to appreciate and savor when things don't go well, because of how it makes achieving your goals that much sweeter. So, before I was a national champion, I lost in the finals the year before, and it was losing into the finals to the same person who beat me in the quarterfinals my freshman year. So literally trained all year to beat this one person my sophomore year, and I lose to him again 5-4 in the finals. It was not a fun experience, but I knew, and from just having similar tough losses in high school, that when I won nationals the next year, it was going to feel that much better because of having lost. So it's really that mindset of saying, you know what, when things don't go well, I immediately know how to flip the switch to, I'm feeling sorry for myself, to say, okay, that happened. Let's learn the lesson so we don't do it again. But then let's also use that as fuel for the fire.
Extracting the lesson and the emotion without letting it destruct you into a shame spiral and all that fun stuff. That's interesting. So then, have you continued to wrestle through this whole thing? It's funny, like, you don't want to mess. It's funny, like, you're like, oh, I'm an engineer, I'm a geek, and then there's this whole other, caveman-esque side that is wrestling. Do you still continue to do that? Is that?
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's definitely true that few folks in the wrestling community would self-identify as intellectuals or scientists. I wrestled in college. Obviously, MIT was an amazing place to wrestle because all of your teammates were, nerds. We actually called ourselves the tough nerds, which is pretty funny. And we actually got these singlets with basically all of these equations from all the different majors in the team on the singlets. It's pretty great. But so after I graduated, was not ready to be done with the sport. So I coached at MIT for 3 years. Really just to keep working with the team. Then basically things got too busy with Ember, so I couldn't coach full time, but try to help out where I can. So even up until the pandemic, was trying to go in and wrestle once or twice a week. I miss it a lot during COVID, and I'm looking forward to getting back on the mats. But yeah, it's I found it's just an incredible outlet. When you're wrestling, you're not thinking about anything else, and you're certainly not struggling with calculations.
You talk about paradoxes. We're not just a brain, and we're not just a body. We're these different characters, and then you water one area and forget to water another part of your body, and it's really important. So that's why what I was really curious on was just there's got to be, starting any business, there's a certain amount of mental fortitude that you have to do. There's a certain thing that you will get kicked in the teeth. Things will go wrong. Your plans will not do what they want, and finding ways to either grow and evolve your character as you grow and evolve the company is super critical. And that's why I was wondering how, you need that outlet. If something doesn't work in the lab, I imagine strangling somebody on the mat probably is a good outlet to to let it flow from you. I was wondering though, the tough nerds, by the way, I love that statement. Again, along that, you mentor people in that space. Are you mentoring people in the area of science as well? Is that something that you like to do, is give back in that way, shape, and form? Or?
Yeah, I'm super passionate about science. I think what's happened as Ember has grown is it consumes more and more time. But, I think 2 years ago, I was volunteering at a local school in Cambridge, helping tutor kids in math and science, which is a lot of fun. And it's something I would like to do more of. I was a TA in college, and I find that really rewarding. And I think, more kids would be interested in science and math if it was taught in a more, in a way that kind of acknowledged its applicability to the real world, which, so have done it in the past, hoping to do more of it again. Right now it's just things Ember has done as startups do. It definitely eats into lots of other areas.
Yeah, man, it becomes you. I mean, you're basically married to your co-founders minus any of the other side activities. So it's a thing, but also balance is good. And it's great. Passionate teachers could literally change the world, right? Whether it's wrestling or it's science or you insert the thing. It is a shame when there's a teacher or a mentor who just doesn't care and who's just like, read a book and just throws it,
I mean, the whole reason I'm here is because of passionate teachers and coaches, both in high school who got me interested in science and technology and helped me realize that, no, this is not just a textbook. This is literally the real world. Like what you're learning in chemistry class is, how your school bus is fueled, and then the same thing in college. And, in my freshman year of high school, I was 87 pounds soaking wet. And yet, I thought I could become a champion wrestler. And, my high school coach was this amazing guy who just totally made me believe that was true and kind of said, this is what you need to do to be successful. And, just was supporting me behind the scenes in such a way that it wasn't until years later that I sort of realized all the ways in which he'd helped me, because he just did such a good job kind of being there when I needed him, but also doing everything else in sort of an invisible fashion. So I just thought it was me. But yeah, my whole life it's teachers and coaches who have made the difference. And, I think everyone who is successful and even people who aren't successful look back and say, hey, I can point to a specific person who kind of made me realize I have potential.
That's so powerful. And believing that you have potential is such a key for getting over the hump of feeling like a fraud and things not working. How do you every day is a struggle with a business, right? There's things you got to go in and do like that. And it does have wear and tear outside of like wrestling. How do you get armor for the day? Do you have certain routines and patterns to keep mental resilience? Are there things that you do? Or like, how do you deal with the struggles and the strifes of having a startup?
Yeah, I do have my routine, but I think first it's relationships. So, I have an amazing girlfriend who I live with and love very much, and she's super supportive, and have an incredible family and group of friends. So just have such a strong, sort of social safety net of people who, love me and support me and feel like I know I can confide in. So that's just a really strong base. And then, I figured out kind of what works for me over time. So I really like to just start with tea in the morning. I've been actively journaling for 8 years now. So I journal almost every day. Been, meditating on and off, but really have over the last year, as things have gotten busy, have kind of been more serious in my practice. I try to kind of make time for those things. The one I feel like I could always do more of is exercise. Wrestling is definitely my favorite way to work out. That hasn't been very possible during the pandemic. So I tried to experiment with other things, but, I try to just create space by kind of having time in the morning where I'm not on my phone and I'm, kind of just having a cup of tea and only having a cup of tea, and then, journaling, and then, meditating, and that seems to work pretty well. And then, in the evenings, really try to be away from screens, or be away from my computer at least, and then try to be present with family and friends and loved ones.
Seems like a very healthy way to go about it. Not narcotics and stimulants to get through the day. The phone creeping into your bed to get work done and answer emails, it's sneaky, because it will come in, and I'm not gonna look at my phone, but then you're like, oh, I'm just gonna look at this one thing, and then you just like a slip and slide, just whoop, right into the thing, and then you don't get your morning.
Yeah, like many folks, I watched the Social Dilemma when it came out on Netflix, and you kind of really appreciated the dollars and brain power invested in getting you to use this tool. And, you sort of realize, okay, it's using you or you're using it. And, there's so much money at stake to get you to use it. And so I'm not great at it, but I try to be mindful of my screen time and of, trying not to, have my phone in bed or anything like that, and to make sure I'm sort of putting it down at a reasonable hour. But it's challenging. And I mean, it's certainly, being in a startup, you can always check your email. There's always a chance there's another email coming in, or, there's always things you could do. And so you really have to figure out how to create those boundaries and know when to step away.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. Figuring out creating those boundaries without them being slippery slopes is a brutal challenge on the path of entrepreneurship, because you so desperately want to build a great company. You want to put in this time. It's like you're giving birth to this baby over time, and it just takes 9 months. To 9 months, it takes 7 years or less to be able to grow it. So it's a challenge. What do you have, like, in terms of material science? Are there people that you have as mentors or people that are doing amazing work that get you excited about the material science technologies?
Yeah, I mean, not super up to date on the field, but I think it's fascinating. Areas of material science I think are particularly exciting. So cold, clean tech, like, if you look at the reason there's been such a surge in solar panels and, batteries, that's because of the work material scientists, among others, are doing. In computational modeling, so the ability to simulate how a material will behave, and use that to inform design, that's becoming incredibly powerful as we've gotten more tools and more computational resources. And then biomaterials, I think, are just endlessly fascinating. I mean, if you think about, nature is the greatest material scientist and engineer we've ever met. You look at, like, a building is made of steel, right? If the steel breaks, it breaks. A person is made of bone. If the bone breaks, it heals itself, right? And that's just one example. A plant is basically a solar power panel that is even more efficient. So there's just tons and tons of examples of all the different types of materials nature can make, from underwater materials to like incredibly extreme climates, and there's just great work being done there about how we can learn from those designs.
That's super interesting. Wetware, using making your own types of. I didn't even think about that. Is there technologies like CRISPR play a part in terms of this, where you can kind of gene splice out certain elements and be able to construct and build some sort of materials that are biomaterials and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't claim to be an expert on that, but from what I do understand, what CRISPR is powerful in that it can do is it can basically give instructions for basically making proteins, right? Like, if you think about it's like the mRNA vaccine is another analog. Like, ultimately, an antibody is a material, right? It is, because a material is just basically matter, substance made of matter, and it's a micromaterial or it's a nanomaterial. But what's powerful about something like CRISPR is if you know the exact sequence of a protein, if you know all the amino acids, you can basically instruct a cell using CRISPR to make that protein for you. And if you can get that protein to do something useful, whether it's protect you from a virus or, break down CO2 or whatever it is, that becomes an incredibly powerful tool.
Wow. Yeah, it literally, becoming gods in the way of shape and form. You're creating life. You are, lack of a better term. I'm not an expert in the space. Mine's more virtual reality, so this is more of a passive observer in the technologies. But being able to splice together and create elements and bring over, like, sections of a genome from one area, so that all of a sudden your tomato becomes camouflaged so that you can hide your tomatoes better, as a poor example. But it's very, very fascinating. In terms of thermal wellness, what do you see as, what's the future of your company? What is your ultimate, like, holy grail searching, looking to make this into? Do you have a deep vision for what you want Ember Labs to be, whether it's wetware or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we imagine a world where technology and sensory data and the human experience kind of work together to help people live better lives. There's a lot of technology that has not that is kind of inhibiting well-being instead of enhancing. And we really believe that, we're technology optimists, but it has to be designed that way. And our mission is to develop the technology to bring thermal wellness to the world. And we think temperature is such a powerful vector for this because of how foundational it is, and because it really connects 3 disparate elements. It's your environment, it's your mind, and it's your body. It's how do my surroundings and literally the temperature impact how I feel, both physically and also emotionally. It's how does my emotional state impact, my perception of my surroundings, and it's how do I feel physically. So Ember is actually an acronym for environment, mind, body, resonance. So that's really our vision, is this idea that these things can work together in harmony. And if we believe that if we can make that happen, and then, people's well-being will be enhanced, or people will thrive.
Oh, that's awesome. I never knew that. Environmental mind-body resonance. Is that what you said?
Environment. So not no toll, but environment, mind, body, resonance.
Environment, mind, body, resonance. That's super cool. And you're using the thermal means to kind of create that equilibrium between those elements. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So great. And so, okay, with that being said, is there anything else? Because I know you have a hard stop here, so I want to give you time to get to the other meeting. Is there anything else you want to let people know about before you tell them how they can find you and the wave?
I think what really excites me is the idea of a shift in really people's perception of temperature, because most people right now, they think of it as it's a problem to neutral, right? It's like a temperature. Most people think about it when there's something wrong, right? That sort of best case scenario, you don't think about it. Occasionally you're like, a hot tub would be great right now. And that's kind of the closest people get to this idea of, temperature can really be something positive. It can be a solution. And, the thing that's really obsessed us for this past 8 years is the idea that temperature is a solution to so many problems. It's a solution that you can use in everyday life, and you don't need to wear our product. We developed an Ember Wave because we think it's a really great way to use temperature as a solution, but even just bringing a little more mindfulness to your shower in the morning, what temperature do you like it? Do you notice when you turn the dial up, that's actually not because the temperature of the water has changed. It's because your perception of how hot that water temperature feels has changed. Are you reheating your cup of coffee because it's too cold? So there's all these little elements of where you're using temperature to change the way you feel. And I would just invite people to bring a little more mindfulness to that, because that's all thermal wellness is in a general sense. It's using temperature to help your well-being. And what we've just done is invent what we think is a really powerful tool to let people do that. Awesome. But the mission is bigger than our company.
Great. And if people wanted to find out more about what you do and get a hold of you and learn about your product?
Yeah, so Ember Labs is the company, EMBR-LABS, online and on all social. That's probably the best way. I myself am not too active on social media, but I do have a Twitter account that I very rarely use, but I will probably be retweeting some company announcements in the next month or so. So stay tuned for that. And really appreciate you having me, Dylan. It's been really fun.
Of course, Sam. I appreciate your time. Thank you for dealing with the technical difficulties in the beginning. Very much appreciated. And I look forward to hearing more about Ember Labs and everything you're up to later on. So thank you so much for your time, brother.
Anytime. Take care.
Take care now. I'll see you later. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes Quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others. Thank you for listening. See you on the other side.